it's Ian from RTO here. Welcome to Pick and Mix, where we mix it up every week. And this week we're looking at a producer. Now we're going to rest the producers for a little while, and an old favourite is coming back in January. So today we're going to have a look at a producer that was involved with more heavy metal, and that is Christopher Andrew Tsangarides, born in 17th of August 1956 and sadly passed away in 2018. Record producer and sound engineer, has worked with some great artists, and he is sort of half English, half Greek. He started in the music business back in 1974 as an apprentice at Morgan Studios in London, which was one of the major independent recording studios in the UK. His first job was to be a sound engineer on Judas Priest's Sad Wings of Destiny album, and engineered the British hit single Naughty 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 in 1977 by Joy Sarney. Who remembers that? He did a little bit of mixing with Japan's Obscure Alternatives in 78, Colosseum 2 and Brand X, and Chris befriended Colosseum 2 guitarist Gary Moore, and he worked with Gary quite a lot, and sadly Chris died of pneumonia and heart failure on the January the 6th 2018, age 61. So let's have a look at his see what albums, and then I will pick my top 5 albums produced by Chris. So his actual producing days actually started in 1978, and the first album that he did was a Gary Moore album, and it is Gary's debut solo album, Back on the Streets. Excellent album. Love this album. It's got Back on the Streets, and of course it's got the beautiful Parisian Walkways on it as well. Continuing to work with Gary went out on tour, and Chris produced the live album, Live Gary Moore, done from the Marquee, which is raw and in your face, and a really good little live album. Then he goes and works with another great band of new wave of British heavy metal. He works on the debut album for Tigers of Pang Tang, Wildcat, another good album. Two great tracks on this one are Euthanasia and Killers. Then we move on to 1981, and he's still there working with Tigers of Pang Tang on the second album, Spellbound. Gangland and Silver and Gold are two of my favourites on there. Now, obviously, he'd worked with Gary Moore on Parisian Walkways, and Phil Lynott was on that. So Phil Lynott employed Chris to work on the next Lizzie album, which was Renegade. A great album. Some of my favourite tracks on there is the brilliant Angel of Death, which is just a fabulous song, and of course the title track Renegade itself is pretty cool. Let's move on to 1982, and he works with another heavy metal band called Anvil. A really good band. Metal on Metal, cool album. The March of the Crabs, which is this instrumental which blows you away, and a little thing called Tease Me, Please Me. 1983 is back with Gary Moore on the brilliant and underrated Dirty Fingers. It's got Jack Bruce appears on this. Great lineup. Hiroshima is brilliant, and Nuclear Attack is fantastic as well. I think that's the one Jack Bruce sings on. Then he goes back and works with Anvil on their next album, Forged in Fire, another excellent album. Free as the Wind and Hard Times, Fast Ladies are killer tracks on that. Then he goes and produces an album for Rock Goddess. You remember them? all-female heavy metal band that were formed in '77 by sisters Jodie and Judy Turner, and he produced their album Hell Hath No Fury. It's not a bad album. The Do You Wanna Love's good, and You've Got the Fire, pretty cool tracks. Then he pops over to the States and works with Y&T. Well, as my mate used to call them, Yuck and Trash, but they are not Yuck and Trash. They are a really good band. Breaking Away is one of my favourites off that album, and I'm not sorry. Goes back and works with Phil and the boys on Thin Lizzy's last album with Phil. The fantastic Thunder and Lightning. The Holy War is just mind-blowing, and Cold Cold Sweat was running down the back of my neck. Remember seeing on this on Top of the Pops, and it totally blew us all away. What an album that is. 1984. Now, he works on a live album for a band from Spain called Baron Roxa on their Baron Al Roja Vivo. I've had a listen to this, and it's pretty cool. And I will do some stuff on that band at some stage. It's not a bad little album, actually. And then we go to another band. Remember these? The Lords of the New Church. Supergroup. Comprised of vocalist Steve Bates from the ex-Dead Boys, guitarist Brian James, The Damned, Dave Traguna from Sham 69, and Nick Turner from the Barracudas, and their album Method to Our Madness. Good album, actually. Baby Scream and Fresh Flesh is pretty good. 1985, he's back with Anvil, and he does the Bat Waxed compilation for them. 1987, works with Black Sabbath on the Eternal Idol, Tony Martin. Shining and Hard to Love are the highlights on there. Then he goes and works with, in 1990, he's having a break, he goes and works with Tiger Tails. Now they're a Welsh glam metal band from Cardiff on their album Berserk. It's not a bad album, I'd never heard it, and I had a lot of fun with that one. And I did like a track called Love from Baby and Action City. Also in 1990, remember he engineered on Sad Wings of Destiny, he goes and produces Painkiller for The Priest. Well, what a fantastic album this is. I saw them on this tour and it blew my head away. Painkiller is killer, and Between the Hammer and the Anvil are two of my favourite tracks off that album. Staying with 1990, he's off working with Mr. Bruce Dickinson on his debut solo album Tattooed Millionaire, where he does a great version of David Bowie's pen song for the Hoople, All the Young Dudes, and the song about him, Born in 58. I love them two songs. 1992 now, and he goes and works with thrash metal band Exodus on their Force of Habit album. Not a particular favourite album of mine, but Force of Habit's okay, and Count Your Blessings is pretty decent as well. Next up for Chris was working with a band called The Tragically Hip. Now they're often referred to as The Hip, but they were a Canadian rock band formed in 1984, and the album they had was Fully Completely. Courage and Locked in the Trunk of the Car are pretty good tracks. It's a band that I need to have a look at, I think. Then we go and work with Halloween, German power metal on their Pink Bubbles Go Ape. Super little album. Kids of the Century and Heavy Metal Hamsters are pretty good. Then we goes and works with Ian Gillan on his solo album Toolbox. It's got two of my favourite tracks, Hang Me Out to Dry and Dirty Dog. Then up next, Concrete Blonde on their album Walking in London. Now, Concrete Blonde are an American rock band. It's Not Too Bad, Woman to Woman, and I Want to Be Your Friend Again are pretty impressive. Up next for 1995. Starts working with Iain Malmsteen, and on his 1995 album Magnum Opus. Really good album. I love I Die Without You and Voodoo. Then in 1996, Iain does a covers album, and it's called Inspiration. It's okay, but there's one track that really stands out on that, and that's Rainbow's Gates of Babylon. Up in 1997, he's back working with Gary Moore on his Dark Days and Paradise. Not one of my particularly favourite albums, but I do like the track Where Do We Go Wrong on it. Pretty cool. Then he goes back to work with Iain Malmsteen on his Facing the Animal album. Like an Angel is brilliant, and My Resurrection, some absolutely killer guitar work on there. 1998. Works with a Brazilian power metal band called Angra on their album Fireworks. Metal Icarus is really cool, and Extreme Dream is as well. There's another album with Concrete Blonde, the Bloodletting album. The actual title track Bloodletting is pretty cool, along with The Beast. 2001, first of the new millennium, is back working with Gary Moore on the Back to the Blues album. Enough of the Blues is brilliant, and then he does a great version of Stormy Monday by T-Bone Walker on that album. Staying with Gary Moore, in 2002 he works on an album called Scars, which was a little album that Gary made with ex-Skunk Anise bassist Cass Lewis and Primal Scream drummer Darren Mooney. It's called Scars. It is brilliant. When the Sun Goes Down and Just Can't Let You Go, a brilliant track. So I love that album. Then he produces Gary Moore's Live at the Monsters of Warrock album. Brilliant stuff. 2004. Works with a band called This Girl. Now, they're a band from Rotherham and Sheffield, rock band, all girl, and they had an album called You Know. It isn't too bad. Master Blaster and Inshallah are pretty cool tracks. Back with Gary for the power of the blues. That's Why I Play the Blues is brilliant, and then he does a version of Evil, which is a Howling Wolf track, and it's brilliant. 2005, he's working with the New Model Army. Yeah, on their 2005 album Carnival. Rumour and Rapture is brilliant, and LS43 is pretty cool as well. 2007, he's off working with Dave Cousins from the Strawbs on his solo album The Boy and the Sailor, which is a pretty cool album. We will be doing some Dave Cousins. And Mother Luck is wonderful, and Hellfire Blues. Just love Dave Cousins. Then he's up with Anvil again, and on This Is 13, 13th album, so the title track's pretty cool, and The Greed. 2008, back with Dave Cousins on his Secret Paths album, and the wonderful sad song of a Sad Little Girl is wonderful, as long as How I Need You. Dave must have been impressed with Chris, because he invited him to work with them on the Strawbs album, The Broken Hearted Bride. Not a bad album. Everybody Knows an Action Replay are pretty cool on there. 2009. They must have been impressed, because he was invited back to network on the Strawbs' next album, Org Dancing to the Devil. Brilliant. The Pro Prata Patria suite is wonderful, and Dancing to the Devil's Beat. 2013. He goes and works with Steel Eye Span on the Wintersmith album. Wintersmith I love, and The Good Witch, proper Steel Eye Span tracks. And 2015, he's working with UFO on their Conspiracy of Stars album, the killing of the kind, Ballad of the Left Hand Gun, is just a absolutely brilliant track. And that sadly takes us to the last album that Chris worked on before his untimely death. And who did it? It's Girl School on one of their comeback albums, Guilty as Sin. What a great comeback album this was. Take It Like a Band is brilliant, and the title track Guilty as Sin is killer. So there we are. There is that is Chris. His catalogue. He's worked with some great people over the years. You know, he was a fine producer, and he's sadly missed because his work was so good. So I now have to choose my top 5 albums. It was pretty hard, this was, but in the end we went just like this. So coming at number 5 for me was Bruce Dickinson's Tattooed Millionaire. Bruce vocals, Yannick Gears on guitar, Andy Carr on bass, and Fabio Del Rio on drums. It's got the wonderful son of a gun on this. I do like Yannick's guitar work on this. This shows what a good guitarist Yannick actually is. Of course, we got Tattooed Millionaire on this. Great song. There's a track about his life. Born in '58, Hell on Wheels. Solid guitar solo on that. I'm not going to go too much in because I haven't done anything on Bruce's solo stuff. Gypsy Road, another really nice song. Dive, 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 brilliant. The version of All the Young Dudes was a big hit for him. We've got Licking the Gun, the bass line is corker on there. Zulu, really good. Another of my favourites was No Lies. Great album, certainly better than the last Iron Maiden album that was out at the time. Really good album. Number 4. This is one of the most underrated and forgotten about albums from Gary Moore. It's his 3rd album from '83. Dirty Fingers. They made another album called G-Force, which they shelved for this one, which was a good move. Although G-Force is good, but this is good. So on here you've got Gary Moore, you've got Charlie Hunn doing some first singing, Jimmy Bain on the bass, Don Airey on keys, Tommy Aldridge. Absolutely brilliant. You've got Hiroshima on here. Dirty Fingers is an instrumental. It's just Gary doing brilliant. Bad News, bass from Jimmy Bain is good. Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. The Animal Song, they do a great version of that. Run to Your Mama, a great rocker. Then we have Nuclear Attack, which is just absolutely killer. Kidnapped, really going to rock you tonight. It's just a awesome. Lonely Nights, Rest in Peace. What a great ballad. Very, very underrated. At number 3, the 12th album and the first album that featured Scott Travis on a Priest album, the brilliant Painkiller. Rob Halford, KK, Glenn, Ian and Scott. Don Airey just play keyboards on here. Opens up with, of course, the brilliant Painkiller. Hell Patrol, it's a corker. All Guns Blazing. Wow. Leather Rebel. Metal Meltdown. Nightcrawler. Between the Hammer and the Anvil. My favourite track on this album. A Touch of Evil, another classic. Battle Hymn, a little short bit, and One Shot at Glory. Fantastic album. After Turbo, they came back with an absolute belt. Although I like Turbo, this is proper Judas Priest. My number 2 album is from 1992, and it's Ian Gillan's second solo album, Toolbox. When he had been sort of removed from Deep Purple, he went and come up with this great album. So on here, Ian Gillan does the vocals, Steve Morris on guitars, Brett Bloomfield on the bass, Leonard Hayes drums, guest musicians on the first track, Leslie West, the legend from Mountain. And the first track on here is one of my favourite songs on here, Hang Me Out to Dry. Absolutely brilliant. Having Leslie West play guitar on it, cool. Toolbox is just a brilliant rocker. Sounds great on here. Dirty Dog, plenty of Ian Gillan screeches on that one. Candy Horizon, more of that lovely screaming. Steve Morris's guitar work is good. That Don't Hold Me Up, the most gentle track on here, I do like that. Pictures of Hell, killer track. Dancing Nylon Shirt, one of my favourite tracks on here, great bass line. Better Nails, another great track. Gassed Up, just a good old fashioned rock track. Everything I Need, and then Dancing Nylon Shirt. Again, it's very underrated. I think this is probably a better album than Master and Slaves. But my number one is Thunder and Lightning from 1983. The first, it was John Sykes' only album with them. So it's Phil, Scott, John, Darren Wharton on keyboards from Dare, and of course Brian Downey on the drums. Thunder and Lightning, what an opening track. Oh, blows your brains out. This is the one. Cracking track. John Sykes, really good on that. The Sun Goes Down, I love this. Love that Phil's bass on it. Darren's keyboards and his backing vocals make this song so good. Holy War, one of the great tracks off this album. Then we've got the heaviest and the best track on here, Cold Cold. It's Cold Cold Sweat. Love that. Someday She's going to hit back. Another solid rocker. And the brilliant Baby Please Don't Go. That great bass line in that. Bad Habits and Heart Attack. Just a great album from Thinless Eater, which was their last. It was very, very good. So there we go. There is some of the great stuff that Chris Tsangarides produced. Okay, that's all for the shows today. We'll be back tonight though with a live stream from 8 PM British Summertime. If not, we'll be back tomorrow, and we're going to live album ranking, and we're going to do a bit of jazz tomorrow. We're going to have a look at Weather Report's live albums, and they're pretty cool. And we've got a brand new album, and it's their first album, I think, for 35 years, and that's MC5 and Heavy Lifting. So have a great day, and bye for now.